Good morning. On behalf, on behalf of the director of the Bard Graduate Center, Susan Weber, it's my pleasure to welcome all of you here in this room and in the overflow room next door to today's symposium. I would also like to welcome those of you watching us elsewhere in the world on BGC TV. Bard Graduate Center respectfully acknowledges that while we are here on West 86th Street, we are at the same time in Lenapehoking, the ancestral homeland of the Lenni Lenape. And we also recognize New York City as a past, present, and future crossroads for many indigenous people. Today is the first Mr. and Mrs. Raymond Horowitz Book Prize Symposium, and so it is appropriate to begin with a word about the Horowitzes and their gift. The Mr. and Mrs. Raymond J. Horowitz Foundation for the Arts was established by Raymond and Margaret Horowitz in 1993. During their lives, they collected works by overlooked American Impressionists as well as American realist painters. They generously left their collection to the National Gallery, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the Brooklyn Museum, and other important public institutions. In 2012, the Horowitz Foundation endowed an Institute for the Arts of the Americas at the Bard Graduate Center that supports student fellowships and faculty research. We are very grateful to the Foundation for this gift, and we are honored to be building on the legacy of Mr. and Mrs. Raymond J. Horowitz. The establishment of this book prize represents the belief of the Horowitz Foundation and the BGC that the best way to honor great scholarship is by generating more of it. And that is the treat we have in store for us today. The prize is awarded annually by a committee of BGC faculty to what they deem the best book in the decorative arts, design history, and material culture of the Americas. As the Bard Graduate Center celebrates its quarter century this year, we are proud to mark it by pushing the geographical boundaries of what elsewhere is generally called American studies. This small single-letter shift from American to Americas reflects the commitment of the BGC to a truly hemispherical approach and not the more common focus on one country only. Awarding the inaugural Horowitz Book Prize to Gary Urton's Inka History in Knots reading Khipus as primary sources, which was published by the University of Texas Press in 2017, reflects this commitment to geographical breadth. But it honors much more than this. Gary's book is a remarkable example of the cultural history of the material world. First and foremost, Inka History in Knots is about textile, about corded fiber, about the very matter of communication. It is a history written from and out of material. For the deep learning and the dexterity with which that learning is spun into story, Gary's book earned the admiration and awe of the book committee. For this alone, it would merit the Horowitz Prize. But there is a whole other argument that the book makes, and which puts it on a different plane altogether. And with this, I will draw my remarks to a close. Gary argues in this book, and it is a book that is as passionate as it is erudite, that for far too long, the presence or absence of an indigenous written history has been taken as an index of civilization. With it, and a non-European culture is accorded equality with Europe. Without it, and that culture is relegated to a kind of second division in the league table of nations. Cracking the code of the quipus has, for Gary, been about the objects, but also about the subjectivity that is or is not accorded to the people who made them and used them. Gary has responded to the challenge of written history by decoding the quipus as documentary writing. The preservation of lists, like the act of list-making, in fact goes back to the beginning of states and administrative documentation. We find it in the earliest writing from Sumer in Mesopotamia, as we do in inscriptions all across the Greco-Roman Mediterranean, and in the monograph tradition of Chinese imperial history. And these lists, in turn, provided the first modern source-based researchers into the past, the antiquarians of early modern Europe, with their body of evidence. We have gotten used to thinking that history is narrative. when in fact, most conserving of past memory has not been through narrative, but through what Francis Bacon once described as, and I quote, passages of books that concern not story. This slippage has occurred because histories and writing are what are studied by historians trained to work with writing. And so the other thing that so captivated the committee about this book is that it points us towards a future in which we can find the past in places other than writing because we and our students will have learned how to read other languages, whether metal or wood or ceramic or, as in Gary's case, fiber, and to treat them as sources. By putting the issue of what counts as written front and center, Gary has made an argument that transcends Andean studies and is vital for all of those who seek the past in decorative arts, design history, and material culture. The symposium is really Gary's, and so this is where the baton is passed. Gary Urton is Dumbarton Oaks Professor of Pre-Columbian Studies in the Department of Anthropology at Harvard University. His MA and PhD degrees are in anthropology and were awarded by the University of Illinois Champaign-Urbana. He is the author of a number of books, including At the Crossroads of the Earth and the Sky, 1981, The History of a Myth, 1990, The Social Life of Numbers, 1997, Inka Myths, 1999, Signs of the Inka Khipu, 2003, and of course, Inka History in Knots. He has been awarded fellowships by the John Simon Guggenheim Foundation and the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation. He is the founder and director of the Harvard Khipu Database Project. And so it is my great pleasure now, on behalf of the Bard Graduate Center, to introduce Gary Urton to begin this symposium.